Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
So, welcome to the show. Now, this is going out on Mintwave radio, so you can ask Alexa or just go to karenrobertscoaching.com/Mintwave-radio to listen in live or see our schedule. Or you can also go to karenrobertscoaching.com/podcast-network to see mine and other coaches' podcasts on our network. You can download the app for Apple and Android, and please subscribe and follow or even leave a review. So today's episode is episode 105, and today we have Anza Goodbar, who is a leadership and business coach, and we'll be talking about how to solve bigger problems by getting bigger from the inside out. So I'm your host, Karen Roberts. Now, we provide a platform for coaches, consultants, therapists, and healers to get their message heard to the people who need it. So as owners of Mintwave radio station and the Raising Vibrations podcast network on Podbean, we also have a directory. So come and find the right fit for you. Just go to karenrobertscoaching.com/directory. Or if you'd like to be featured and have access to 1 million views throughout the year. So Anza is a former mortgage banker turned business coach and 7 times, yes, you heard that, 7 times, Amazon best-selling author. Anza is passionate about taking complex business ideas and breaking them down into simple, actionable steps, thereby taking the fear out of the scary parts of running your business, right? After coaching and teaching hundreds of entrepreneurs to replicate themselves and implement business strategies, it became clear to her that their biggest gap in business growth was fully developing their leadership and communication skills. So welcome to the show, Anza.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so happy to be here today.
Awesome. So if you'd like to share with the listeners maybe a little bit more, we've just sort of shared what your bio is, but how did you get to doing what you're doing now? Can you share a little bit more about your story?
Absolutely. Well, you alluded to the fact that I used to be a mortgage broker, and we owned our own business from 2004 to 2008. At that time, we were poised to go regional with our company, but then the crash of the mortgage industry happened, and all of a sudden my life was turned upside down. And I thought, you know what? Maybe this is just an autocorrect. We just need to hold on and life will go back to normal. And it very quickly became evident that there was not going to be any normal moving forward in the mortgage industry. And along those days, I had met a woman through networking who had a virtual business. And she kept wanting me to hire one of her gals to do virtual work. And I kept telling her, I said, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I have a brick and mortar business. I need people in my office to greet people coming in, to get them coffee, to make them feel comfortable, to make photocopies, to set up signing rooms. They can't do that from down the street, across town, or around the world. And I just saw absolutely no fit for this whole idea of a virtually run business. Well, a few weeks go by and all of a sudden I'm thinking, maybe I should go see a headhunter. So I did. And he's like, man, you're so marketable. You've got all these skills. I bet I could get you $45,000 a year. And I was like, yeah, well, that doesn't even begin to cover the lifestyle I've created. So I thought to myself, who do you know? And I was like, I need to call my friend and learn more about this virtual business. And initially I thought, it's just going to get me by until normal comes back. We really thought we would be able to overcome this plummet in the industry. So I said, do you think I could do what you do? And she said, absolutely. So a week later, I had a website, I was talking to people, and I landed my first client. So
in 1 week.
in 1 week, right?
Yay!
So I was talking to someone the other day and I said, it was a sink or swim situation. I needed to figure out money fast. And I said, it's a good thing I'm a good swimmer because I needed, to replace the income that I had been generating. So within 6 months, I had 11 women working with me. I was making more than six figures, and that was the beginning of what now is Anza Goodbar Coaching and Consulting. We started out by providing online business services, but the people who came to me were people who wanted to start a business. They needed to know process and procedures. They needed to figure out the ins and outs, or they plateaued and they couldn't figure out how to get beyond, six figures to start working towards seven figures. And so it was interesting to see the women and a couple men, but mostly women who had come to my business looking for help. And I kind of have a unique background in the fact that both of my parents owned businesses. So from the time I was 11, I had worked in the family business. I had seen leadership modeled for me. When I was 11, I was actually teaching cooking classes to women who were purchasing microwave ovens. Yes, I'm that old. I hate to admit it, but microwave ovens were a brand new thing. And so on Saturdays, I taught cooking classes. And so from an early part of my life, I knew that I loved teaching, I loved sharing, I loved adding value. And, when you add value, it's easy to grow your business, right? When people feel seen, heard, and understood, they want to continue to have those conversations and to stay in your inner circle to work with you. And that has been a foundation that we've laid from the very beginning.
Wow, love that. And something I picked up on that you said earlier, which I find really interesting, and I think this is quite often the real key to push. You said I think you said your back was against the wall, or something to words to those effect.
Right.
It was sink or swim time. And
Mhm.
I really feel that so many, when they start a project, an online business, or they come out to be a coach, and they might be still working full time, so they're comfortable, they're in their
Mm.
comfort zone. They might want this bigger goal, but the bills are being paid, everything's okay, so they can procrastinate a lot more. Whereas sometimes, not saying that that's that's what everybody should do, but sometimes when your back is against the wall, that is when you really find that inner strength to get out there and make it happen, and make it happen fast. 6 months. How many people did you say on your team? 11, did you say?
11. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty phenomenal for somebody that's just starting an online business. You say that you had parents that were obviously entrepreneurial, they had their own businesses. What else do you think made the difference for you to be so successful so quickly?
Well, at the time, I was a single mom and I had four kids, and three of them were still living with me and were relying on me. I wasn't getting help from my ex-husband, so there was no child support or maintenance being paid. It was all me. And I had just moved into a custom built home. And so there was all of this weight of this responsibility that I need to figure this out. I've got a lot of
Wow.
people who are, depending on me. And so that was a big part of it. And then I think there was this other part of the people in my inner group saying, oh, all the .com stuff has really failed. Doing this online business thing isn't going to get you anywhere. You need to just be safe and go back and find another job. You'll figure out your bills. It doesn't matter if it's, a quarter of what you've been making. Just play it safe. And so I've got this little voice inside of me that's like, don't underestimate what I can do. I'll show you what
Oh,
I'm
love that.
capable of doing. And so that was a big driver. But, and we talk about this a lot in business, and I'm sure you do with your clients too, is knowing who your avatar or your niche is. Now, back in the day when I started, we talked about who's your target audience, who's your ideal customer, and just really being clear on what you know your gifts are and your strengths and your weaknesses, and going out and looking for who can I help with that set of strengths and weaknesses. And I knew that I was a great problem solver. Two, I was great at thinking outside of the box. Three, I'm so organized. It was like my mom used to tell me I was a born planner. And it's easy to look into someone else's situation and say, hey, you need these processes or systems. And a lot of automations and things were new back then, but those were things that we definitely looked at implementing. I had a degree in journalism. So it's like, how can I use my writing skills to help people? And initially, I did a lot of ghostwriting for business executives who didn't have time or the desire, or who just weren't good at writing, to be able to do syndicated blogs for them. And so I just looked for really creative ways that I could help other people grow their business, with the idea that the more successful I made them, the more successful my business would become. And, and it really worked out that way. And initially I thought, before getting into mortgages, I had over 14, 15 years of event planning. I thought I could help people plan events. I've done, team building. I've done retreats. I've done arena events. I've done, whatever. And none of that materialized. It was all geared towards, I need to grow a business. And, as horrible as that time was and as stressful as it was wonderful when COVID came along, because it was a similar situation. It affected the whole country and not just an industry, but there were a lot of women who were looking to pivot. They had to give up their job or give up their income in order to be at home to help school their kids, but they still needed to figure out how to produce income or generate income in a very quick way. So all of those lessons that I learned back in 2008, 2009 were still relevant and appropriate to a whole new group of people that had a similar problem. And so as you're growing your business and you're thinking about what problems can I solve, look at your inventory. What have you been through in life that has prepared you for growing a business or helping somebody solve a problem in their business? And that's really important, to be able to have that inventory of skills that you're able to look for, that can be transferred into a sellable business product or service. And we all have them. We've all had highs and lows in our life, but how can you transfer that into a solution for someone else who might be going through a similar situation?
Love that. I mean, what you've just said there is quite interesting, that these things happen, and like you say, everyone, life, it has its ups and its downs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you lost everything in the crash, and I had a similar, I'm sure many people did, but isn't it funny that if that didn't happen, would you be doing what you're doing now, right? So actually, isn't it funny when you look back and you can think that was actually a blessing, because look where you are now, and you were ready for when, obviously, another nightmare happened. However, did you think, I've been through it before, this is nothing, we'll get through this now, and actually I can help more people? So you were in the right position, actually, at the right time. And I love the fact that Mama Bear came out and she was going to make it happen for her kids. It's amazing what us mothers will do for our children, right?
It is amazing. It is amazing. And, taking risks is part of building a business, is part of the entrepreneurial journey. And while I recognize the value of being able to replace your income and phase out from that full-time job, you show up differently in your business when you don't have another alternative. You do things that maybe you were afraid to do, or you thought you would be ostracized for. I can't tell you how many people looked at me when I started my online business like I had 3 heads. It's like, you're doing what? How can you do that from home? What do you mean you don't meet these people face to face? How can you possibly run a business without being in an office? There were so many questions, and so many people just didn't get it. And now it's such a norm. Here we are 15, 17 years down the road, And it's like, who doesn't know somebody who runs a business from home or runs a family-based business? It is a viable way to be able to build a business and have an income and build it around your family. So many entrepreneurs that I work with work tons of hours. They're burning the candle at both ends. They're constantly fighting burnout. And from the very beginning, I decided, and I had always worked my 9 to 5 jobs that way too. It needs to work around my business or my life. I was a single mom. I had multiple children, after school activities, performances, you name it. I needed something that was flexible that could work around my lifestyle. And so when you're looking at moving from your 9 to 5 and moving into owning your own business, really think about, what does that mean for you in your life? What structure do you need to have in place? How can you run your business without working ridiculous hours? And it can be done. It can totally be done. You can make 6 figures and work part-time hours if you're doing it smart. And I believe that every one of us out there have that ability to do things smart, work smarter, not harder, right? Use
That's
those
the
automations,
goal.
right? Out.
Yeah, and set your boundaries. I mean, and again,
Yeah.
and I understand that because I haven't in the past, because this thought process of I've got to make this, I've got to make it happen, I've got to make it happen. And
Mhm.
what I have found personally is, weirdly, when you do actually set your boundaries and take time out for yourself, it's not being
Yes.
selfish, but it's self-care, things go far more smoothly because you're not stressed. There's not so much stress. So you probably got more mental clarity to make the right decisions. And
Yep.
it's just amazing. You were doing that from the get-go.
Well, I think, again, I had such a unique experience growing up with 2 entrepreneurial parents that was something that just came second nature to me. And I know that doesn't happen for everybody, but in the very beginning, when I started my business, I read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And while I don't think the 4-hour work week is practical, I do believe the principles are very applicable to your life. And so looking at what things can you automate, what things can you delegate, what things can you eliminate? Because oftentimes we get really busy doing things that don't matter. They're just busy. And so it's like, I'm growing my business, I'm so busy. It's like, yeah, but what are you doing? Is that busyness creating revenue? If it's not, you need to take a look at it. Now, there are some things that need to be done that don't generate revenue, but those might be things that you could delegate to a VA. Never underestimate the value of having somebody on your team to help you grow your business. Because as a female business owner, you don't have to do it all. Even though I think like 95% of us think I have to have my hands in all the pots and keep them all going. And you don't. And nor should you, because you really want to focus on being the best at what you're good at and not be mediocre at all the different things that need to be done. And it makes a huge difference in how quickly you can scale and grow. It makes a huge difference in the type of clients that you attract into your business. And it makes a difference on how, who and how many people want to be a part of your team. I have people come up to me all the time, do you need somebody on your team? I really want to work with you. I want to grow with you, because they see that synergy that happens behind the scenes. And it's really important when you're looking at growing and scaling that you have those foundations on the back end to support that future growth that you're looking to achieve.
Totally. And isn't it an exciting time right now? I mean, the software and tools and things that can help, to scale, to automate things. I mean, there is actually no better time, I don't think, than right now, because the things that are in place, just, can make your life so much easier than, 10, 15 years ago, even when you were, you said that you were super organized yourself. Oh, my life. I'm not the best. I've had to learn. I'm not naturally an organized person at all. And if it
Right.
wasn't for the tools and software and things in place, I would be overwhelmed, totally overwhelmed right now. But for those sort of starting out, and I get this in the beginning, and I suppose it must come from a bit of fear and is this going to work? Am I worthy? All these kind of limiting beliefs. Because for some, it's when do you take that leap? Because you're right, we can't do it all. And you're right, most of us try to do it all in the beginning. And there becomes a time when you are overwhelmed and you've got to sort of outsource stuff. And I'm thinking, why didn't I do that way back then? So how would you recommend to people, when is the time? When is the
Right.
time? Do they just take that leap of faith like you did? You took that leap of faith. Yes, your back was against the wall and you had to come out and you had to make it happen. But everybody wants these big goals, but they're still sort of playing in that small lane.
Right. Well, everybody's going to say, ew, when I say what I say next, because nobody wants to do this part, but it's so essential. And especially if you're looking at leaving your full-time job and jumping into entrepreneurialism, you want to be very clear about where you're at and where you're going. And in order to really do that, you need to write a business plan. You need to write down who it is that you serve, what's the problem that you solve, how do you solve it. You need to put together a marketing plan. You need to know, where are you going to find these people? How are you going to market and communicate to them? How are you going to make yourself stand out? And then you need to go through and you need to start setting some goals. And oftentimes people have a bunch of to-do lists going on, but they're not necessarily a goal that is time bound. You need to be able to take your goal and break it out into smaller pieces. And you need to set some dates, because if you don't have a date attached to your goal, you're going to say, oh, I don't need to do that today. I'll do this instead, right? And so you need to hold yourself accountable, because we need to lead from within. That's where leadership starts. But you also need to have an accountability group. You need to have a coach. You need to have a business bestie, a mentor, somebody that's checking in with you to say, hey, did you do these 3 things today or this week? Oh, you didn't? Oh, well, why not? And when you know that you have to answer why not, I can guarantee you that you are going to be 80% more invested in getting that done, because it's okay if you let yourself down. You can self-talk yourself out of that all day long. But boy, do you feel crummy when you let somebody else down and you said, hey, I'm going to do this. Because part of growing a business is being in integrity and holding to our word, right? It's like the verbal handshake that used to happen decades ago. That's what accountability is all about today. It's that verbal handshake. I said I was going to do it and I did it. Real life happens. Kids' schedules, you get sick, overtime at work, things happen. But what you need to do is not say, oh, gee, I didn't get that done. You need to reassign a date to it and start committing to working toward that new date. And when you meet with your accountability person, hey, I didn't get this done. This came up. It interrupted me. It's going to be 3 days from now when I'm able to complete that. I did take some steps forward, but just didn't complete it. And then I think it's really important to celebrate those small milestones, because seeing those small milestones helps you build momentum. It helps you see the momentum that you're building, because sometimes before we're up and going, we don't necessarily see those little victories. And it's really important to pause. And I always tell everybody that I work with to use a journal. It can be a spiral notebook, doesn't need to be anything fantastic or expensive or beautiful, just somewhere that you can write down what's going on. And every time you have a victory, write it on the calendar, write it on your journal. So when you're having days where you feel really defeated, you can go back and you can look at those 20, 25 wins from the very beginning. And then, you get to a point where you have pages and pages of wins that you can go back. And when you face that fear of, I don't know if I can take that next step, I don't know if I'm ready, you can go back and look at how many ways you've prepared yourself for that moment to take that step and get to the next level. And we all need to, find our own way in how that works for us. But those are the pieces that I have all of the women that work with me put into action. And you would be amazed at how much momentum you build and how quickly you build it when you build your own track record and really recognize it. Because women don't recognize their own achievements very often. It's like, oh, I didn't get that done. Oh, I fell short. No, that's not what we want to focus on, because we all fall short. We all make mistakes. That's part of the journey. But we want to focus on those victories and the things that we're learning, the ways that we're growing, the things that we're accomplishing to really build to the next level.
That's a great tip. And do you know what? I've got somebody sent it to me, and I was thinking, am I going to use that? A little calendar. I'm going to use that for that one particular thing. I mean, I talk about, celebrate your wins, but actually I wasn't doing it properly. So I'm going to utilize that. So thank you very much. And you're so right about the accountability. What I see is, you know what? When you have a job, you just get the job done, don't you? You don't question it. You don't procrastinate about it, because you've got your boss or the manager or whatever it is, the owner of the company, there that you have to do it. And you're so right that when you're on your own, it can be a lonely place at times. And like you say, I'm sure it's not conscious, but subconsciously you can sort of avoid sometimes doing the things and put off by having an accountability partner, having a coach. It does. It's not necessarily to get the knowledge. It's not about more information. It's actually about holding you accountable to the things that you said you were going to do. And I
Exactly.
think you're so right. That is just massive for people's success. So, your title, as it were, leadership. So when we talk about leadership, why is leadership important to growing your business?
Oh my goodness. We could talk for weeks just on that. I'll try and keep it short. So, leadership affects everything in your business. And I like to think about it as the spoke of the wheel. Because if you have a delegation problem, you have a leadership problem. If you have a micromanaging problem, you have a leadership problem. If you have a turnstile of people coming in and out of your business, whether it's clients or employees or contractors, you have a leadership problem. If you have a hard time making decisions, you have a leadership problem. If you have lack of clarity, you have a leadership problem. So the leader starts with the vision. They need to have that vision. They need to have communication to transfer that vision from their head and their heart to their team. And their team needs to be able to have that buy-in, and that happens through communication. And so leadership actually touches every bit of your business. And, one of the worst jobs I ever had was working in an accounting firm with a group of 40 women. We were led by a woman. Everybody in the office was women, and it was all backbiting. Nobody wanted anybody else to get ahead. It was jealousy. It was conniving. It was horrible. I hated going into that job, but I got that job through a headhunter. I paid a lot of money for that job. And so it was like, I've got to get my ROI out of it. I think when we're building our own business, sometimes when we see someone else shining in an area that we don't shine, we want to squash that a little bit. So we still feel like, we're the top of the heap. And really, in reality, we've got to reverse that thinking and think, if I am going to grow my business, I have to grow leaders around me. I have to grow leaders inside of my organization. I need people that I can trust to have my back. I need people that I can delegate to, where I can be freed up to do these other things that need to be done that only I can do in my business. And so I think it's really important. And that's kind of where the growing from the inside out comes, is that we need to increase our emotional intelligence. We need to become better communicators. We need to be better at handling conflict. It's really hard to have tough conversations and say, man, you really blew it today. You know what? That cost us X thousands of dollars because of that mistake. Let's talk it through. How did you make that decision? How did you come to do those actions? Why did you forget that step? Why didn't you reach out and ask for help? All of those kind of conversations are real life conversations that have to happen from time to time. But if we're really good leaders, we preempt a lot of those things from happening because we're delegating properly. We're delegating to the right people. We're communicating the result or impact that we're trying to make. We have processes and procedures, right? We have training materials, we have checklists. That all comes from leadership and setting the expectation. We're holding people accountable for their actions or lack of actions. And those things are all really good to have. But I can't tell you how many people say, no one taught me how to have those difficult conversations. Nobody helped me identify, what my strengths and weaknesses were. There's a book, it's called Rocket Fuel. I forget who the author is, but it talks about, as the leader, CEO, visionary in your business, who do you need to have as your second in command? What does that look like for you? If you use the DISC, if you use the Myers-Briggs, it's really important to understand who you are, how you work, who you need to work with, who's going to complement your style so you're not butting heads. I had a client that I worked with years ago. I was still pretty new in my business, and it was horrible. It was like oil and water. We were constantly mashing heads together because we were so different. Our whole philosophy about how to run a business was different. The roles that we were playing, we had different definitions for what that meant. So it's really important to be really clear about who you are, who you need on your team. One of my clients is a huge micromanager. She doesn't trust anybody to do the job, so her hands are in all of the pots, and she's exhausted all of the time, and she realizes that needs to change. And when we talked about it, she realized that she hires people because she likes them, and then she has this expectation that she could just put them in any role in her business and they could just do it because they like her too. And so that's all, it's going to work out. But it never does. And so she's constantly bringing new people in and letting people go. And it's been a cycle for a long time. And all of the sudden, after many years of having this conversation, and she's like, I'm going to change. And then she doesn't. It's like, now I get why people fail. And, in her mind, it was almost like they were deliberately not doing what she asked them to do, when in reality, they were doing their best to live up to the expectation, but they didn't have the education, experience, or skills to do the things that she was asking them to do. And so it's really important as a leader to be able to be hiring people with the right criteria, with the right motive, and being very clear about the job expectation. Does this person have this ability? Because not everybody does, and that's absolutely okay. That's why we have different people with different gifts and talents and strengths and weaknesses, so we can come all, together and fit cohesively together to build our team. But it's really important when you evaluate how important leadership is as your role as the entrepreneur, the business owner, to be able to get the results that you want, because there's so many factors that play into that.
That makes so much sense. I can't remember which one of the tests that I did. I know I'm very spontaneous. I know I was told that I would need somebody doing the books. Yeah, absolutely. Somebody doing my books. And I think it was a VA, and I need somebody to manage me.
That is such an important realization. And that's a game changer in your business. When you have someone who can help with that, it's a game changer.
Yes. Yes. And because I know my strengths, I know I can be a little bit all over the place. I have these big ideas and I do get the stuff done, but really I need somebody with the attention to detail on it. I can sort of be off on once I've had, the big idea and set things in motions, I need somebody to come in and right.
Right. Well, and that is so true with so many entrepreneurs because they are the visionary. They are never at a shortage of ideas and they want to do them all and they want to do them all right now, but that isn't always practical. And so you need that person beside you who can say, that's a great idea, but we need to wait until second quarter to implement that because we're not done implementing this yet. And so let's finish this and get this up and going. We'll pick this up and we'll, get it started. And they can be laying some of the groundwork for that even before second quarter comes, but you don't want to give up on the priorities that you're working on. And that's a big reason why a lot of entrepreneurs and especially people who are transitioning from full-time into their own business is they have all these ideas and they just keep starting new things, and nothing ever gets to the finish line. And you really have to, especially with the foundational parts, get those to the finish line. You need to have a calendar and that planning and, be able to have that vision. This is what I want to do. This is when I'm going to do it. This is the natural organic progression. Because if you don't, there was a book I read many, many years ago, and I can't remember the name. It was, I think the subtitle was like How We Work. And she talked about how some of us are very concrete. We're very tangible in nature. We need to touch it, feel it, smell it to know that it's real. And then we have people who are abstract and they live in the idea world. And everything is about all these ideas that keep coming up. And that's what energizes them. And you need to marry those two types of people together who can take that energy, that idea, and bring it into concrete idea, execution, and practicality, and turn it into actionable items to get it done. And so I think having those realizations of how we think, how we do, how we process is really important, and bringing in the people on our team that can help us reel it in a little bit, because we all need to be reeled in and directed. And again, just that accountability piece to be able to say, did we get that done? Well, we're going to have to delay this because, we have a little bit of a domino effect, but we all need to be in agreement that this piece needs to be done before we can implement or execute this next piece of the puzzle. Because otherwise you just end up with alphabet soup,
Alphabet soup. And I agree. I was so much like that. You really described me not so long ago, sort of 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
Because I had all these ideas, and it's funny, and I think I just got to, it's probably age. I got to say to her, do you know what? This is going to work. I'm committing to completion with this. I'm going to take my time, because I would jump in head first into things straight away. No, I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to do this properly. And getting the right help. Again, you've got to take that risk. You have got to take that risk. We can stay in that safety, what seems safety, but it's not. It's not safe at all, and it's actually restricting us from growing. So, what can you do to increase your leadership capacity? If somebody's out there and they think, okay, I know things I need to change, but what are the things to increase it?
So reading, of course, is always a easy way. Pick up a book, listen to an Audible, tune into a podcast. There are leadership seminars, conferences that you can go to. One of my favorite books is The 15 Invaluable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. He walks you through 15 different stages of leadership. It helps you look at what your gaps are. Helps you look at limiting beliefs that you have. There's practical little exercises at the end of each chapter. It's a book that I literally reread every year at least once, usually 3 or 4 times, but at least once. It's something that I go through because every time I read it, I'm in a different place in my life. And so look at Where are you struggling? Where do you need some help? Do you have some gaps you need to fill in? Or is it communication that you need to work on? And find some reliable sources that you can go to find the information. Finding a mentor. Find someone who is where you would like to be down the road. They've been where you are. They've overcome those fears and struggles and insecurities and imposter syndrome and all those things that are part of the journey. Meet with somebody, work with a coach is another great way. They can help you identify, they can help challenge you, they can help give you some exercises to work on to be able to push through those types of issues. There are so many things that can hold us back, and sometimes we don't really see them. For women, it can be body image. That can be a huge thing that holds them back. They don't want to be seen on camera. They've got
Mm.
issues, with the way that they feel people are going to perceive them, so they choose to hide. Some of us deal with that feeling of I'm not enough because of something that happened in their background. Some people feel like they will lose their friends and family. I had a client who believed that if she gained wealth, her friends and family would desert her and she would be all alone. And so she self sabotaged continually until we were able to identify and get to what was the root of that belief? Where did that really come from? Because sometimes our fears are really just in our head, right? They're totally in our head. We've made them up. It's not really ever going to happen. One of my mentors said this to me. It's probably going on 10 years ago now. What other people think of you is none of your business.
And
I
that
was like,
is so true.
right? It's so simple, right? And he's like, you're right. And he says, it's what you think about you that matters. So what do you think? And so, journaling is another great way to work on building out your leadership skills. Have some journal prompts. What's working well? What isn't working well? What could I have done better this week? Spending time in reflection. There's a lot of different
Mm.
thinking types, right? Big picture thinking. We can look at the big picture. We're looking down at our business and being able just to be objective about what's happening well, what isn't happening well. Reflective thinking, sitting down and really analyzing. I had a client meeting and it didn't go really well. What could I have said
Mm.
differently? I had a blow up with one of my employees, and man, I came down really hard. What made me snap? How'd I get to that point? What was that trigger? Why did that bother me so much? Being able to really
Mm.
sit back and reflect and dig deeper. Sometimes we don't feel courageous enough to have that conversation with someone else. But you know what? Our journal is a great safe place to be able to hash those things out and figure it out because we know inside if we dig deep
Mm.
enough, if we give ourselves permission to think and feel and own what those types of feelings and triggers are coming from, it's really important. And so, scheduling time for yourself,
Oh,
to like you
massive.
said, self care is not a selfish thing, and part of self care, I think, is having that time you know, to exercise, to get rid of the
Mhm.
stress in our because if we're stressed, we're not showing up as our best. We're more apt to snap, we're more apt to make poor decisions, we're more apt to have failed communication. And so being able to schedule that time that's non-negotiable, spending time to detox, recognizing when do I
Mm.
need to pull away? When do I need to get out of social media? When do I need to stop comparing my journey to someone else's journey? Because I can guarantee that the journeys that you see on social media are not always reflective of what's happening in reality. And,
Not at all.
when I first started in my business, I thought, who will follow me? I just had this epic fail of a business. Who will hire me to help them grow theirs when I've got this huge, fat failure heap sitting there publicly in our community, right? But you know what? The fact that I was able to overcome that was what brought people to me because,
Yes.
that's what made me real. And it took me a long time to get to that point because there was shame, there was embarrassment, there was humiliation. There was a lot of stuff that I had to unpack to be able to get to that next level in my business. And a lot of that was done privately in my journal because I didn't feel like I could be vulnerable, that I could be transparent in those ways. Because I was like, how can I be the expert or the authority in anything if all people see is this big pile of hot mess, right? But that isn't the case. That isn't the case at all. And we have to be willing to look at ourselves in a very objective way to be able to see where we need to grow as a leader. What do we need to let go of that no longer serves us? How do we need to show up and claim who we want to be? Because we don't just become that person. We have to make a choice in our mind. This is how that future me would show up. This is how she would have that conversation. This is how she would deal with conflict. This is how she would fight through the fear and do it anyway. I'm a huge fan of the show Yellowstone. I don't know if you get that over in the UK, but
yes. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's on Netflix or Prime.
Yes,
I've seen it. The title. Yeah.
There is this new prequel to the story called 1883. And so it's where the Dutton family is making their way to Montana, and they're pioneering, and it's wicked. It's just wicked hard being a pioneer. And there is this scene where I think the mom's name is Margaret Dutton, and they're having to cross over this river, and they're helping this group of 60 people cross over this river in covered wagons. And so the husband decides that they're going to do it at night and be ready to take everybody else in the wagon train over in the next morning. But he wanted to do it and chart the trail through the water. And so he's going on horse with their young child, and his wife is taking the wagon and the horse team across. And I'm thinking in my mind, the horse is a whole lot easier than the wagon, right? And why is she the one doing the wagon?
Yes.
And so he's like, are you okay to do this? And she's like, yes, I'm okay. I've got this. And she's looking very determined. And Faith Hill plays that role. And she's such a strong woman in real life anyway. So he's kind of on the horse leading the way for her to go through the ruts that are under the water that you can't see. And you've got the moon shining down to give them light. They get to the other side. And I mean, I was just on the edge of my seat, like the wagon's going to come apart. They're going to lose, a wheel. And she gets over there and she looks at her husband and she said, cover his ears. And so they cover the little boy's ears. And she said, when you said this was going to be tough, you should have done a better job describing what that means, and that's true with business, because sometimes we're in that covered wagon crossing the river at night. We can't see all the pitfalls. We don't know what it is. We have to trust our instincts. We have to be able to push through that fear and get to what's on the other side of the bank. And, for them, that was one step closer to freedom. And I think they're going after land that was promised by the government. So, getting that life that they want. It's the same thing for an entrepreneur, right? We're going from this life of being driven by other people's wants, needs, and desires, expectations, goals, right? And we're moving into the freedom of building our own time freedom, our own financial freedom. And sometimes it's a scary process to get across the river because you don't know what's beneath the surface of the water.
Absolutely. And, if just knowing that obstacles are always going to come up. I mean, come on, Anza. Do you know anybody? Who's gone from here to here? Or has it been
Right? Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the process, and it is, and this is why I think it is essential. I love that tip. I've literally got a small square calendar, and I thought I didn't put it in the bin for some reason. I left it on the edge of my bed
Yeah.
because I only opened it the other day, and there you go. That is for that particular thing to do. Because
Mhm.
yeah, we don't. It's so easy to forget how far you've come, because it's like weight loss. You know,
Mhm.
I don't know if you know, I come from the fitness industry originally. So, you know, my life was really helping people lose weight. And it would be so easy if you don't, what gets measured gets managed. You know, at the end of the day, you've got
Yes.
to be organized with it. And
Yes.
because you see yourself every day, so you see yourself might be losing a little bit, and you get a bit complacent, you get used to it, you think, oh, you know, I haven't lost weight. No, hang on a minute. Look where you were when you started. Now
Exactly.
see how far you've come. But it's so easy not to. And then people lose interest and they get distracted and they lose motivation. But this is why, yes, it's so important to track your progress, because then you can look back and go, wow,
Mhm.
actually, what we've achieved in this last year is pretty phenomenal from, you know,
Yep.
where we started. And yeah, you say we've been conditioned not
Yes.
as though it's rude to celebrate. It's bit that's, you know, you can't, you know, blow your own trumpet. Well, you don't have to do it on social media, do you? But why not? You know, no, write
Exactly.
it down and celebrate it.
Yeah.
We're told to know, you know, shush.
I know. And especially as girls, girls
Oh,
aren't trained.
even
I
more
used
so.
to I know. I used to sell, cosmetics with Mary Kay Cosmetics, and one of the things that they would have us do is crow, and people are like, "What is crowing?" And, crowing is standing up and sharing a victory that you had unapologetically, right? "I made 5 new contacts this week. I sold $100 of product. I did this, I did that," and it's okay to do that, and people
Oh,
get so excited for you when you're able to share the things that you did. And,
yeah.
it's not to put anybody else down, it's not to create competition, it's to create support, excitement, momentum, inspiration.
Yes.
Because when somebody new is coming in and they hear that you did that, they start to believe, I could do that too,
Yes. And I think
and
that was the most amazing thing that's really come from all these network marketing,
Mhm,
MLL companies, is the ethos behind that whole thing. It was the whole self-development thing. I would never have been well, I'm sure maybe I would have at some point, but
mhm,
that's how I was introduced to the self-development arena. It was through being involved in a network marketing company. I wasn't very good at it at the time because I had some mental blocks about selling. What do you mean? I don't want to sell supplements. No, I
right,
do what I do. Oh, I just want to jump around in a studio, being, getting sweaty and motivating people to work harder. I don't want to have to
right,
sell them something. So again, it's all something that we learn. It's funny, isn't it? Have these, I had a mental, I didn't want to talk about money. What do you mean talk about
mhm,
money? Oh, we don't talk about
mhm,
money.
yep,
But
yep,
it's just things we learn. And it's always us. You said earlier about, us getting out of our own way. It's always me that's in my own way. I think for everybody, it is get out of your own way,
it
and
is.
there you go. There's the road. There's the road to success. You're going to do it.
There it is, right
Um,
there. Yep.
so for anybody listening, thank you so much for being on this show. Lots of wonderful tips, and what a fantastic conversation. So how do people find you? What is it specifically you do? How do you help people? Where do they find you? Where do they sign up?
Awesome, awesome. Well, I make it really easy to find me. You can find me on my website at anzagoodbar.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Insta, on Facebook, anzagoodbar.com. We help entrepreneurs scale and grow their business. And specifically this year, we're helping them do that through producing their own live event to really help position them in the marketplace as being the expert at what they do. And we teach them strategies on how they can do that and, create 6 figures in their business rather quickly.
Fantastic. Oh, I mean, that was what I wanted to do, and so that was what I wanted to do. Live events before we all know what terrible global
Oh,
nightmare
yeah.
happened,
Yes.
but it's all over now. It's all
It's all
over
over.
now. It's all
Yeah.
over now. But now I'm doing what I'm doing. Eventually, I'll maybe get back into the live arena, I suppose.
Yeah.
But and I think it's, and honest to God, I still think to this day it is the best way, probably the quickest way to get you to see. There's nothing like a live event. I spoke on stage back in November for the first time in 3 years. Oh, it felt so good. It
does,
felt
doesn't it?
so good to be in, I can feel your energy, and this is on Zoom, but in a live setting, it would be just so, there's so much. There's so much more that you get from being in a live setting. So I love what you're doing. I absolutely love what you're doing. And so, yeah, easy to come. And do you have anything in particular that, people, where they're at on their journey? When would be the right time for them to come and maybe plan out what their sort of live event thing could look like?
Absolutely. We're going to be hosting a live webinar coming up in mid-February. And so I'll make sure that I give you the link and they'll be able to sign up and discover if a live event is for them. And if it's not time yet, it will definitely give them some good pointers on how they can position themselves to be able to use live events in the future.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely perfect. Yeah. If it's funny, we've all had to, pivot is a new word, isn't it? Since in the last 3 years, everybody's had to pivot. So I did my pivoting. Maybe at the end we've got such a big year plan, but maybe next year will be my time to go into the live event arena. It'll be wonderful. But yes. Oh, it's been fun having you on. We've spoken now a couple of times. This is the third time. You've got great energy. You can tell. I think anybody can tell that you know your stuff, and you'll be the right fit for, I think, a lot of people, a lot of coaches out there who maybe are ready to make that step and they're ready to scale their business. Stop playing small. Stop playing small, especially and not just women. I know there's guys out there as well, but especially I think women tend to play the smaller game. And no, come on, I really feel that 2023 for so many people out there, it really is going to be their year to shine. So that's absolutely amazing. So yeah, thank you for giving up your time today. And to those listening, if you're a coach yourself and you're looking at scaling your business, and live events are definitely one thing. Another thing might be having your own show, having your own radio show, having your own podcast. We will help you create your own podcast channel, have your own personally branded website. That could be a next step to get you out there, to get you heard, to get your message heard, to sell more of your programs. So if you'd like to know more, come to my website above or book a call, KarenRobertsCoaching.com/discovery for just a quick informal chat. It's not a sales call, it's an informal chat. And for anybody else, then I will be back on Thursday with a coffee with Karen. So bye for now.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.